My name is Jeremy Johnson. Christopher Zorn is my co-author. And so we're looking at how Court of Appeals panels are assigned. And not only how the panels are assigned, but also how they are assigned cases, which, according to the rules and procedures of the various courts, are randomly assigned. And so we're examining basically to see if that holds over a long period of time. So random assignment is really great because it lets us do all sorts of scholarly things. We can look at panel effects, we can look at the demographic traits, such as if a panel has a female judge, they make more pro-feminine rulings, and this allows us to basically use this mechanism for randomization, which allows us to draw causal claims. So what we want to know is, are these judges are the panels being randomly assigned? And we've got a little bit of literature that says this. One of the biggest is Atkins and Livornia, which looked at the Fifth Circuit in the civil rights cases, and they said, no, absolutely not. We're loading these panels, we're putting pro-civil rights judges on them so that they will give us pro-civil rights cases. Tiller and Cross have looked at ideologically balanced panels, so they've also recommended not randomizing and saying, let's ideologically balance these panels. Let's put 2 Democrats and a Republican, or 2 Republicans and a Democrat on these panels for balance. That way it's not just randomly assigned and you get a 3 Republican or a 3 Democrat panel. So our data comes from 2 main sets. The first is Don Saunders' Court of Appeals database, which gives us a random stratified sample of all the cases from 1925 to 1996. And what this, what this allows us to do is predict or see when these judges appear. The other thing that we have is a federal judicial biographical database, which gives us every federal judge that's ever been, all of their biographical information, all of their demographic information. And what we can do from this is simulate the cases that these judges would have. We get from Saunders data the number of cases that appear per circuit year, which they use for weighting, but what we can use is to say, okay, let's put 3 judges on this case, 3 judges on this case, and we can simulate all these cases. And how we turn it around is we simulate Saunders data through appearances. So we have 3 judges to a panel. We know how many judges were on the panel, and we can basically say, this is how many times we expect a judge to appear in any given circuit year. And then we're taking the differences of the appearances that we find in Saunders data and the appearances that we find in our simulated data. And so what we find is, really it's not much different from 0. There's definitely some outliers, but for the most part, we find it just a little bit below 0, which we're chalking that up to senior judges and judges sitting by designation. That's one of the things that I definitely like to hear some advice on, is how to account for that, because we have not found a way to systematically account for the availability of those judges. Some senior judges work really hard, as we've seen. Some work very little and just barely cover their half-time basis. And so we haven't quite found a good way to cover that completely. We don't really see a difference across the circuits either, which is nice. There's some circuits that vary just a little bit, but for the most part, they follow pretty close to 0. And so what we're doing with this, the second part of what we're doing, is we're predicting how these demographic traits of the judges will affect how often they sit. So the year effect, how long has a judge been on the court? Does a brand new judge on a circuit court work more than a tenured judge, or does a long tenured judge tend to catch more cases? Same thing with gender, political party. One of the things I'm really interested in seeing is if the ideological difference between a judge and a chief judge affects how often they're assigned to cases. And so what we find is this. The only thing we really see is tenure. The longer you've been on the court, the more likely you are to catch a case. And the same thing with reassigned judges. So judges that change circuits or change courts are a little bit less likely to hear cases in their first year. So where we really want to go with this is we want to better capture the panel assignment process. One of the things I found out through my research on this is this giant black box. I talked to 4 circuit clerks that wouldn't even tell me how they assign panels to cases. Literally said, I can't tell you. We have the circuit procedures, and they vary. Some of them say they're going to be randomly assigned. Some of them are just like, the clerk assigns them, and doesn't give you any information whatsoever. The other thing we want to do is we want to incorporate the case level predictors. So is this a civil rights case, is it a criminal case, and see if maybe that will give us some purchase on how these judges are assigned.